Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Oh, boy. All right. Okay. I was just rechecking the president's Twitter feed. Man's he a busy guy. Two of the better ones. Just this morning there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's done 7 tweets today. What a guy. What a hard-working president. He starts out 2 hours ago, so it's a little late for him to be tweeting, saying, the fake media is working overtime today. There was no collusion between Russians and my administration. And then responding to the fact that the vice president and the deputy press secretary and a million other people had been telling us that the reason that he fired James Comey is because the attorney general and his deputy had come to the acting FBI head. No. What the hell is Rosenstein? Oh, he's Steen. He's the, whatever. That they had come. I'm sorry. I'm just blah, blah, blah. And Trump tweeted this: as a very active president with lots of things happening, it's not possible for my surrogates to stand at a podium with perfect accuracy. So he's saying, yeah, I know they say things that aren't true, but, that's just the way it is because we're working so hard here that the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. For a president to suggest that when their surrogates come out and speak on their behalf, that they may or may not be telling the truth is pretty awe-inspiring. And then there's a threat. Here's his next tweet. This is just an hour ago. Maybe the best thing to do would be to cancel all future press briefings. Yeah. Okay, so then he says, since, I don't blame him for wanting to do that, since every press briefing is just a litany of lies. And then the real threatening one comes right on its heels. Listen to this. This is directed at James Comey, the guy he just canned. James Comey better hope that there are no tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press. So he's trying to shut up. He's threatening Comey. This is the President of the United States. It's not normal. It's not acceptable. It's not. Of course, he's freaked out because in his interview with Lester Holt, which I hope you saw some of because it was mind-blowing, he, I think, essentially outed himself as having, in fact, attempted to interfere with an ongoing FBI investigation. Because unlike all the surrogates had been saying, he did not decide to fire Comey because it was suggested by Ron Rosenstein. Quite the opposite. And he flat out says it to Lester Holt. No, I decided to do that long before. So right there, he has set up the vice president, all of the people who speak for him, who were running around yesterday saying what he had to have told them to say. Then he undercuts them with Lester Holt and says that it had been his idea. And the damning quote is this. First, he says, regardless of the recommendation, I was going to fire Comey. Okay, that makes a liar then out of all the people he shoves out in front of him. And here's the quote that when he said it, I couldn't believe I was hearing it. Here it is. In fact, he says, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. Excuse me? I thought the official version is that Comey was fired because of Hillary Clinton. That was the cover story. Now you're telling us that when you were thinking of firing him, the first thought that came to your mind is this Trump-Russia stuff. This is a made-up story. That's a crime. That's an impeachable crime right there if that was the reason that he got rid of the FBI director. And he's friggin' put the noose around his own neck there. He then went on to tell a story about having a dinner with Comey that Comey, he said, requested, in which Comey essentially was asking to continue in his position. That reeks of being a total falsehood because FBI directors serve 10-year terms that straddle presidents coming in and going out exactly to give them this leeway, that give them some elbow room so that they are not subject to this kind of political and, in fact, criminal action, the impeding of their investigatory responsibilities. So Trump makes up a story about Comey asked to come. He was begging for his job. And then he says that he asked Comey, am I under investigation? Okay, so according to Trump's, this is how stupid he is. If you were trying to cover up, which is what's Trump's doing, you don't concoct a story which actually makes you look worse, which is, I talking to the head of the FBI, and we know that he is worried that I'm not going to keep him on the job. I ask him, am I under investigation? And he assures me, no, I'm not. Anybody who knows James Comey knows he would never have answered that question, ever. Of course, there was only one right answer. Of course you're not, Mr. President. Of course you're not. Here's Trump's direct quote. He wanted to stay on as the FBI head. I said, I'll consider it. We'll see what happens. But we had a very nice dinner. And at that time, he told me I was not under investigation, which I knew anyway. Okay. Some friends of Comey, who he had confided in, people he totally trusted, he had told them about the dinner with Trump. It bears zero resemblance to this story that Trump has concocted. Comey had talked to his friends on the condition that they would never, while he was the head of the FBI, repeat or talk about this story he was telling them. And Comey's description is, of course, first of all, that he didn't ask to come to dinner. In fact, Trump asked him, and he was very uncomfortable because this was very shortly after Trump had taken the oath of office. Comey, who was in the middle of an investigation of Trump's associates and potentially Trump himself, is thinking, I really shouldn't be having some private dinner with the guy. But then he thought, but he is the president of the United States, and if he asks me for dinner, I guess I'll go. So he did. And Comey spent the dinner trying to explain to the new president how he saw his role as the FBI director. And he tried to explain to the president that the way this works is the country is best served by an independent investigatory agency such as the FBI. And there is no way that, I mean, these are two totally, absolutely opposite. He says, excuse me, I'm forgetting what I was saying. He said all Trump wanted from him was a pledge of loyalty. No wonder, Comey said, he spent the dinner trying to explain to the president that the Justice Department and the FBI have to have a measure of independence from the White House in order for this to be above suspicion. And yet there is this clueless, idiot president asking the FBI director to say, I serve you, sir. I am loyal to you, sir. Comey wouldn't do it. And when he left that dinner, he talked to a few trusted friends and said, I don't think this is going to work. He was right. He knew the fix was in the minute he wouldn't pledge loyalty to Donald Trump. What he said to the president is, I can't do that, but I can tell you I will always be honest with you. Honesty? What the hell's that? Honesty? So, guys, this is huge. This is huge. And it is the beginning of the end. The problem is it's going to take a long, 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 long time because of the Republicans, because of their cowardice and their lust for power overwhelming any measure of patriotism that they have. Krugman writes today, it is naive to expect Republicans to join forces with Democrats to get to the bottom of this Russia scandal. Even if, and it could, that scandal strikes at the very roots of our national security. Imagine that. It is naive to assume that the Republicans will step up here. Krugman says today's Republicans just don't cooperate with Democrats, period. That's it. They will not. They'd rather work with Vladimir Putin. In fact, some of them did. But it's time to face up to a really scary reality here. And it's a reality that most people probably realize. We're in uncharted waters. I just share with you one more bit of thinking. I think this is from Matt Miller in the Washington Post today. But beyond the Russia investigation, even beyond it, lie troubling concerns about the rule of law. The president just fired an official investigating his campaign and his associates, thus crossing a red line once thought unthinkable in this country. And what happened? The Attorney General of the United States quiescently went along. The chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee said that we should just suck it up and move on. That's a direct quote. And the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, excused it in the most nauseating speech I have ever listened to. I happen to be listening on the Senate floor. Nah. So the president fired the head of an investigatory agency who was looking at him and his administration. So Miller writes the institutional checks and balances, the institutional checks necessary to constrain a president such as this are failing before our eyes. It's what I was talking about the other day. The only way this thing works, this tripod of three separate but equal arms of government, the only way it works is if they all do that, exercise their constitutional responsibilities. And because the Republicans own all three of those branches now, they're simply refusing to do it. And our very nation is now in jeopardy. If we can no longer count on an independent Justice Department or any legitimate oversight from the Congress of the United States, we are left with a frightening reality. So that's that. We got some callers in line, so I'll ask them to be as succinct as possible. Joe, go ahead. Joe?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Hey, Trump, one thing he's good at all his life is he's a con artist. And he'll leave people with the bag, holding the bag. I guarantee when this is all said and done, there won't be no evidence on him. Might be on his people, but he will be clean of it. He won't touch it. There won't be no emails. There won't be nothing to connect him to it because he's good at that.
Well, I don't know. But see, Joe, that's what we've all thought about him. But looking at the bumbling way that he's trying to do this particular con, and with so many people now, when he was a businessman, he was doing cons, but there weren't 1,000 journalists watching every move, parsing what's been said. He's in over his head. His con stuff, which might have worked in Manhattan, ain't working where he is now. It is not going to work.
See, I have a different idea on him firing Comey. I think it's because Comey wouldn't kiss the ring. I really do. I think he wouldn't kiss his ass.
Well, that's right. He wouldn't give him his pledge of loyalty. Yeah.
So that's one of the just because of the investigation. I keep thinking at the end it ain't gonna be a whole lot much about nothing. Honest to God, I don't know if it's political. I'm starting to wonder this long they've been doing it, and there's no real evidence other than some of the people that he had. But there's nothing direct linked to him.
I don't know if you're too young to remember Watergate very clearly.
Yes, I'm old enough to remember Watergate.
Okay, but what you forget now with the compression of time is that Watergate went on and on and on, and the stories were poo-pooed, and the Republicans in Congress were saying, that's nothing. It took forever. Investigations are going on. They still won't come around. Then there's this bang. You get a bang, smoking gun, and all hell breaks loose. You get tapes. I don't know. This is going to take a long time because there's obviously large forces attempting to impede all of the investigations going on. But you also have this thing called the Fourth Estate, God bless them. And there's some incredible journalism going on here. And eventually, it's going to take him down. There is too much smoke here, too much stench, not to have much of this be, in fact, true. And just the pictures of him beaming with the biggest Russian spy recruiter in the Oval Office the other day, right after he fires the Attorney General who's investigating the Trump administration's ties to that son of a bitch. He's in the Oval Office with the president. This is a smart con artist? I don't think so.
But the thing is, too, they've lowered the bar
so
low with George W., and I hate to keep bringing him up, but nothing was done. They lied. Nothing done. Nobody prosecuted. I mean, there's a few people went in jail, but when you lie about sending people and having them killed in wars that you don't have to fight, then hell, anything goes.
Okay.
So this is mild compared to that.
No,
Nobody
it's not
died.
mild. It's not mild, and you will
Nobody
be.
died.
Have you been noticing that American soldiers are dying under this guy's watch already? They're dying in places you didn't even know they were.
Well,
They're dying in Somalia. They're dying in Yemen. They're dying in Afghanistan and Iraq. They're dying still. This guy who was going to pull us out of all of this. No, Joe, mark my words. Joe, mark my words. You're going to be eating yours. Okay? That's all I'm saying.
I think they'll impeach him, but it'll be political. But when it comes to him going to jail or anything, he won't see nothing.
Fine, just impeach the son of a bitch. I don't care if he goes to jail. Flynn's going to jail. Manafort's probably going to jail. A whole bunch of people are going to go to jail. Hey, I got other callers, so I got to run.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's okay. Thank you.
We'll see you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Dave is on the line. Dave?
Hi, Lynn. Hi. Hello, Lynn?
Yeah, I'm here. Hello?
Yeah. I totally agree with you on Trump. But could I please address a more local form of corruption today?
Change the subject, Tommy. Okay.
Okay. Have you seen the article on Trib Live today about the Great Race spending?
I'm aware that there is, some concerns about, I did not see the article today.
Okay, but let me tell you a little bit more. Okay, I'm a runner. I've run the Great Race several times, signed up to run this fall, called down today, and I knew this wasn't going to happen. I said, I would like a refund. Oh, we can't do that. I said, well, this will be the last Great Race I ever run. I will badmouth your race to everybody else. Well, the person who is responsible for that has been fired. And I said, who is that person? Oh, I can't tell you that. Oh, really?
Wait.
Well, if they've been fired, isn't they come out?
Well, how could you... Okay, who is responsible for what? The Great Race?
She said for the... I can't remember what term she used, misappropriation.
Okay, so somebody who had access to the money, someone up there in the Great Race hierarchy, has now been fired because there's been a misuse, a misappropriation of some sort. That's all. I have not looked carefully at it, but yeah.
No, but that's what she told me. That's not in the article, I don't think.
Okay, so she's saying
that... say, we fired somebody, well, who did you fire? Tell me who you fired. I mean, it's going to come out sooner or later anyway.
Well, they'll say it's a personnel matter and we can't, right? It'll come out.
Well, when I paid my money, I think I'm entitled to that information. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you.
Like I said, I totally agree on Trump. So.
Okay. God, there's crooks everywhere. Okay, thank you, Dave.
That's right.
Yeah, everywhere. Thank you. Bye. Yeah, I haven't, with all the with all the stuff going on in D.C., I have to admit. And there is a lot of local news. Yeah. I'm reading the wrong paper, though. Because the Trib doesn't have a print edition anymore, does it? No. So it's online. I gotta start watching it. Okay, quickly for emails, Kathleen writes, Dear Lynn, you're right. Trump did put a noose around his own neck in that Holt interview. He has noosed himself up. several times recently. The trouble is that a noose around his neck is harmless if there's no executioner. I'll repeat myself. Where is Congress? Where's the special prosecutor? On an unrelated note, where is Clarence? What? Clarence is... We've heard from Clarence recently, haven't we? Last few weeks. Jeez. Gonna make his head big. Chuck writes, although I agree with you that this is the beginning of the end, I disagree that it will be a long time before Trump leaves office. Oh, God, I hope you're right. I think Trump will resign by the end of the summer, if not sooner. There will be no impeachment. Trump longs for his former life. You can see it in his eyes. At some point, Republicans in a smoke-filled room will give him a graceful way out, a way out that he cannot refuse. Perhaps they'll make a deal with him. They will drop the Russian investigation. They can't do that. They can't do that. That'd just be another whole scandal. I don't know. I know he wants his old life back. He knows he's in deep, deep trouble. And he ain't having any fun. Except when he's with the Russians. Then he seems really relaxed and happy. It's mind-boggling. Henry says, can you imagine what's going on in the West Wing now? Resumes are being updated. Emails are being squirreled away. It's every man for himself. People are doing what they must to cover their butts. The staff sees the inevitable and they're scrambling. I bet there is quite a bit of that going on. Speaking of people, looking for... I noted this the other day, but I have the exact words now, and I've just got to, for a laugh, tell you this. The thing about Sean Spicer hiding in the bushes. It's too funny. It's just too friggin' funny. You can't even make it up. Okay. So the Washington Post is the ones who first reported on this, saying that Spicer, quote, spent several minutes hidden in the bushes after giving a TV interview on an outside set that they have. So, according to the Washington Post, what happened is an executive assistant to Spicer emerged from the bushes. Can't even believe this. And told reporters that Spicer would answer some questions as long as he was not filmed while doing so. However, it has now emerged that Spicer was not actually hiding in the bushes. The Washington Post was forced to issue a correction to the story after the White House took exception to it. They took exception to the fact that the Post said Spicer was hidden in the bushes. You know what the correction was? The White House demanded that they say that Spicer was among the bushes. That was the thing. So in other words, he was in the bushes. I guess they didn't like the word hiding. So they admit there was Spicer in the bushes, among the bushes. That's the word they wanted, among the bushes. So the article, if you go online, now includes a note, an addendum, which reads thusly: Editor's note. This story has been updated to more precisely describe White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer's location late Tuesday night in the minutes before he briefed reporters. Spicer huddled with his staff among bushes near television sets on the White House grounds, not in the bushes, as the story originally stated. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, dear. Like they don't have bigger fish to fry? Jesus. Okay, so I came upon this really fascinating thing today, and don't call now because I will refuse to be interrupted. It's titled American Fascism in 1944 and Today. And it's written by the grandson of a former vice president of the United States. The guy who was vice president in 1944. Okay, you history buffs. Now, Donald Trump wouldn't have a clue. Some of you might. 44. And it's before FDR is in his final year. He's still alive. Henry Wallace. Okay. Henry Wallace was the vice president. The New York Times asked Henry Wallace, the sitting vice president, to write an article about whether there are fascists in America, seeing as, at the time, Americans were dying fighting fascists overseas. So the Times said, Mr. Vice President, would you write something about, is the enemy here as well? And the grandson has gotten that speech, that op-ed piece, and he shares some of it. Listen to this. It is as if that vice president in 1944 were talking about America 2017. It is chilling. All right? This is written in 1944 by the vice president during World War II. Most of what I'm going to say are directly his words. Some are his grandson's, parsing them to connect a few. So I'm just going to read it as if Wallace described a breed of super nationalist who pursues political power by deceiving Americans and playing to their fears, but is really interested only in protecting his own wealth and privilege. That's how he defined the danger. You want to spot a fascist in America? Because they don't look like they do over there. Here's what they look like. They're super nationalists. They pursue political power. They pursue it by deceiving Americans and by stoking their fears. But in reality, they're only interested in preserving their own wealth and privilege. Okay. I continue. 1944, he's writing this. It's an absolute description of what we got now. They pretend to be on the side of ordinary working people, paying lip service to democracy and the common welfare. But at the same time, they distrust democracy because it stands for equal opportunity. They, the fascists in America, invariably put money and power ahead of human beings. They demand free enterprise, but are the spokesman for monopoly and vested interests. They also claim to be super patriots, but they would destroy every liberty guaranteed by our Constitution. The vice president in 1944 continued, they need scapegoats. And they harbor an intensity of intolerance toward those of other races, other parties, other classes, other religions, cultures, regions, and nations. They poison the channels of public information. Their problem is never how to present the truth to the public, but how best to use the news to deceive the public. In fact, they use lies strategically to promote civic division, which then justifies authoritarian crackdowns. Through deliberate perversion of truth and fact, their newspapers and propaganda carefully cultivate every fissure of disunity. And what is the ultimate goal? Their final objective toward which all their deceit is directed is to capture political power, so that, using the power of the state and the power of the marketplace simultaneously, they may keep the common man in eternal subjection. That is written by the former Vice President of the United States, then fighting fascism, asked to wonder about what American fascists look like, or would look like. And if Henry Wallace didn't just paint a dead-on, perfect portrait of Donald Trump and today's GOP and Fox News and the whole bunch, the whole thingamajig, it sends chills down my spine. This in today's New York Times. If you want to send it to somebody, because it's mind-blowing. Brooke writes, I never thought I'd look forward to Sean Spicer's return until I had a week's worth of Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She makes me nauseous. There's a lot of nausea going around, isn't there? And Brooke also says, once again, Trump is tweeting about Rosie O'Donnell. That's the other thing. I mean, do you know that he last night tweets about Rosie O'Donnell? This is the fucking president. He's clearly mentally ill, and perhaps his mental condition is how we get rid of him. Anyway, tomorrow's Saturday Night Live is not one you should miss. It is the last one of the season, right? And it's live, and it's Melissa McCarthy hosting. Hoo-hoo. So, God knows. You know what? I bet they're almost at SNL. They must be paralyzed. They're paralyzed. Yeah. Deb says, you got to read Sinclair Lewis's It Can't Happen Here. You know what? I have to tell you, I downloaded it as an audio a book and tried to listen last time I was ill, and I kept falling asleep. And if you can't listen to an audiobook if you're falling asleep, because then you wake up and you think, huh? What happened? But because she just finished it. She probably read it instead of listened. And she said, I'd never read it before. It was written in 1935 or thereabouts. But by the third chapter, you would think it was written in 2017. Yeah. She highly recommends it, by the way. It's these guys in the 30s and 40s, politicians, American politicians, thinkers, artists, writers, seeing what was happening in Europe and then doing what any thoughtful person would do, asking, can that happen here? Thus the title, It Can't Happen Here. for Sinclair Lewis's book. Well, it can. Milton writes, Henry Wallace was never the president of the country. That he wasn't is one of history's great malfeasances. I've been a fan of his for years, one of America's great liberal thinkers. I guess this is another quote from Wallace. The American fascist would prefer not to use violence. His method is to poison the channels of public information. A liberal knows that the only certainty in this life is change, but believes that the change can be directed toward a constructive end. It's another thing that Henry Wallace says. And here's another quote from him. It has been claimed at times that our modern age of technology facilitates dictatorship. And that's so funny that he's talking about this modern age of technology in the 1940s. But again, how prescient that dictators can really use this stuff. And then Milton writes, it is no coincidence that the growth of modern tyrants has in every case been heralded by the growth of prejudice. This dullness of vision regarding the importance of the general welfare to the individual is the measure of the failure of our schools and our churches to teach the spiritual significance of genuine democracy. Wow. Are these all his quotes, or are you that brilliant here? Until democracy, in effective, enthusiastic action, fills the vacuum created by the power of modern inventions, we may expect the fascists to increase in power after the war, both in the United States and in the world. Okay, so that's Henry Wallace again. Warning us. Wow. Yeah. Roger writes, last night I was getting tired of all the Comey news. For shits and giggles. I never heard that phrase. Is that a phrase? For shits and giggles, my wife flipped to Fox. Their news was about ICE arresting over 1,300 illegal immigrants who are bad guys and left the room when the next story was about election fraud. My wife stayed up a little longer to watch Hannity, who talked about fake news. What the fuck? Yeah, it is true. If you look at Fox, I've done it a few times. They're not talking about any of this stuff. They are not talking about the news. Which, again, shows us there's this, you wonder where there's that totally 35, 36, maybe even as much as 40% of Americans who just think Donald Trump is doing a bang-up job. Well, it's because they listen to the disinformation machinery of American fascism. So I'm reading the New York Times, and I come upon two stories that both headlines, I smiled. And both stories, I have to tell you, both stories are stories that back in the day, when things were, we thought terrible, but now we look back nostalgically, these stories would have been what we talked about all day on the show, both these stories. Here's the first one. Headline, Making History with Breastfed Meal in Parliament. And, you know, I would have had a ball with that. The parliament in question is Australia's parliament, and for the first time ever in that country, a sitting member of parliament breastfed her baby while doing her job. And she said later, I mean, breastfeeding is a normal and natural thing that women have been doing since since women existed. Hello? Yeah, since the very beginning. And she says, it's quite strange to me that it caused such a sensation. What it really says is that we need more women in Parliament so that when we breastfeed our babies, it's not considered news. Actually, there's a lot more women in their legislature than in ours. Women hold 32% of positions in the Australian Parliament. In the United States, you know what percentage women? House and Senate. 17%. Actually, 14 years ago, a lawmaker in one of the states of Australia, who was a member of that state's legislature, was asked to leave the parliament for breastfeeding her 11-day-old baby. And they said the reason says that the only people who can be on the floor of the parliament are members of parliament, and no strangers can be allowed. And her 11-day-old baby was a stranger. And then the other one, headline, right under it, Russian convicted after playing Pokemon Go in church. And the interesting thing about this story is that this 22-year-old guy who spent some time in prison before his trial and then after his trial was sentenced to 3.5 years, but it was a suspended sentence for playing Pokemon Go in church and then posting a video of it online. And the judge said this: he had offended the people. The video was a mockery of the Immaculate Conception. Now, wait a minute. Does that blow your mind? This is Russia. I mean, I grew up. Russia was the reason we have to, when we pledge allegiance, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, is because the Ruskies, those Russians, were a bunch of friggin' atheists. So now we got Russia under Putin, and he loves the church. He loves the church because he, in fact, uses it to promote his agenda. And so now all of a sudden, the Russians have gone from total atheism to they'll jail you if they think you dissed the Immaculate Conception. My God. See, but those are, news continues to happen, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, full page ad in the Wall Street Journal today. Mr. President, it says. I think, oh, wow, who's this? And what are they saying? We are writing to express our strong support for the United States remaining in the Paris Climate Agreement. Full page ad, Wall Street Journal. And they go on and on and on about how important it is. This might get his attention, huh? Look at who signed it. It is the CEOs of, I'm just giving you a few, Dow Chemical, the Bank of America, Citigroup, Johnson & Johnson, Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble. Elon Musk is there. Tesla, Unilever, Walt Disney friggin' Company, Morgan Stanley. They're huge. Wow, they're all environmentalists. Who knew? Then you read the letter, and here are some of the reasons. Here are the reasons. Never is our environment or climate mentioned. I'll give you a few reasons. if we were to pull out, there would be negative trade implications for the United States. Our business interests are best served if we stay in. Listen, and they have bullet points. We need to stay in the Paris Climate Agreement because it strengthens our competitiveness. It benefits American manufacturing. It supports investment. And they end their wonderful letter with this: let's work together to maintain the U.S.'s status as the world's biggest champion of economic growth. What? Jesus, God in heaven! All right, so, telling you. And here is an unsettling factoid. Trump's approval ratings are going down, but guess where they're going up? Did you see that? They're going up. In Pennsylvania. A Quinnipiac poll shows Pennsylvanians just love, or increasingly are liking, what Donald Trump is doing as president. Now, you know, it's a headline of this that makes you just sick. And then you read what the numbers are. So it turns out the Quinnipiac poll shows that now a whopping 37% of Pennsylvanians think Trump's doing a great job. That's up from 32% in February. Well, I got news for you. Whoever those guys are who pulled it up from 32 to 37, it's still 37. No one wants ratings like that. And in fact, if those ratings drop, if he were to drop really into the low 30s nationally, all over the place, you will start seeing, I would think, these courageous Republican Congress people starting to back away from him and not necessarily being there for him if they actually think that standing with him could cost them their jobs. Nationally, his popularity is sinking. That's a Quinnipiac poll that came out recently and shows that nationally his number is at 36%, which is now where Pennsylvania is. The national number went down to 36. Ours went up to 36. And here's a disquieting little thing also from the Quinnipiac poll, or the Franklin and Marshall poll. I don't know. Franklin and Marshall poll. Bob Casey, our senator who's running for re-election in 2018, his approval rating is 38%. And that's scary. That's scary. If you guys want to know something you can do to push back, you can help Senator Casey get those numbers up. That's our job here in Pennsylvania. He's been definitely moving, being much more forceful. But guys, I don't care. Give him money. Give him time. Volunteer. Put signs up when the time comes. Do what you have to do, right? Because it would be, we already have shamed ourselves by being one of the states that put this dangerous fool into the White House. And if we also follow that up with a state that actually loses a sitting Democratic senator in a midterm election when we're supposed to be picking up Democrats in a Republican administration, then, oh, God, it's on us. All I'm saying. We got Some local stories I haven't talked about, but I want to get to is the fraternities at Penn State, which now are responsible for the death of a young man. And also, I want to talk somewhat about Woodland Hills School District and what the F is going on over there. Would you send your child to that district? Where thugs in uniforms, drag kids by their necks, tase them, beat them, knock out their teeth. I mean, it's just middle schools, high school, it doesn't matter. Jesus. I want to, before I forget, wish a happy Mother's Day to all you mothers. And I just want to end with a quick obit. Obit, Mario Maglieri. If I told you he was an opera singer, you'd say, "Oh yeah, sure, I remember." No, he ran Whiskey a Go Go, which was a club that was the club. He in L.A. when in the 60s and 70s, he ran Whiskey a Go Go and the Rainbow Bar and Grill, both on the Sunset Strip. And you know who the house band was at one point? The Doors. The Doors were the house band. Jimi Hendrix played there. Janis Joplin played there. Led Zeppelin, the Byrds, Who, Otis Redding, the Turtles, Neil Young. Later on, you had Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, Metallica. I mean, everybody in Hollywood was there all the time. Steve McQueen was there almost every night. Jane Mansfield was there. And somebody said, you'd look up and there's Cary Grant dancing. I want to just read this one thing. One day, Mr. Maglieri's secretary alerted him to an intimidating man who was sitting in a booth writing. So he went over to see him. He says, "What are you doing here?" Maglieri asked the man, who turned out to be Charles Manson. And he said to Manson, "We're closed. You can't be here." He looked at me, says Maglieri, and says, "I can have you killed." After which, Maglieri grabbed the little son of a bitch by the shirt and threw him out of the front door. He got very close to a lot of these people. He was very close to Jim Morrison. And he begged him and Janis Joplin to straighten out. And he's quoted here as saying to the L.A. Times some time ago, 23 years ago, "I'm 70 years old, and I've never smoked a joint in my life. People ask me, and I tell them, dope is for dopes. People want to fight me on that, I'll fight them. I've seen too many lives destroyed by drugs." So, a guy who knew all the greats, liked him, was like a father to him. Well, he'd be pretty much their age, I guess. All righty. No, it wouldn't. He'd be like a father to him. So, I guess that's it. We are done. On Monday, I just have to tell you, Monday, I've got a young guy coming in to give us the young guy's perspective on the fact that we are giving him a country that is falling apart at the seams. And then on Tuesday, Susan will be with us as usual, only she'll be here right into studio. So 2 special things coming up Monday and Tuesday, and definitely hope you will join me. Happy Mom's Day. Have a great weekend. Go Pens.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.